Hello, lovely people. I am Sam. This is Shadow Harvest. Can we talk about names and naming things and how important and powerful that is, very specifically, and the secrecy of names as well? This is something that I started mulling over and over time became the foundation of the lore for my novel that I am currently working on, Sold at 3 a.m. It is a paranormal, political thriller? Mixed with a little dab of romance as well, of course, where basically it's our world, but demons exist, and the government knows they exist, and they started to see them as a huge-ass problem, and they will arrest anyone and anyone who's ever had dealings at all with demons. And so, of course, when I'm thinking of the demonic and looking into things, I'm like, okay, well, how are my demons going to be different? Am I going off of the straight Bible? Am I going off of certain demonic canon, will you? Or am I kind of twisting something on its head? And of course, I had to be a little inventive. While I do think there are some fascinating lore and bits and pieces here that I pick up on and definitely feed all throughout, I liked the idea that these demons are coming to the human world and correcting some assumptions. And so for me, one of the big things is names. Quickly on in my book, you find, I think it's chapter 2, where names are revealed to be how significant they are, because it's not something that demons inherently have. They need to be named in one of our human tongues to have any sort of strong connection to stay in the human realm. And I think this is very fascinating as a kind of a base of how a demon would operate, because learning, I think, demons' names has been a part of mythos in general. And the idea of selling one's soul and needing to sign one's name on a contract or to make that deal with the devil. It involved knowing introductions. Names also are very tricky with the Fae and, never giving a name over. The idea of giving a name to a deity or to an entity or spirit. And by that, I do mean like telling on someone, not giving them a name. Not naming them in particular, if that makes sense, is very potent magics. There's a joke going around social media a lot right now about like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go tell your name. I'm gonna tell your name to the river spirits, and they can handle you. I'm gonna tell the trees, and I'm gonna tell whoever the fuck else, and they're gonna just handle business after I tell them what you did and who you are. And names are such powerful things, but of course, once you name something, it does seem to have this, firmer grasp on it, right? It's like when you name a type of storytelling, if you name or label what disease you have or who you are or what type of person you are, it feels like it gives these constraints and this, one might say, structure as to who you are. It gives this container, which then can be very constraining and not that great, or it could also be something that is great because now you have some scaffolding to work around. And the idea of naming something and having a name being connection in my books with my demons, I think came because of how often names get changed, manipulated, or lost to time. I think a lot about how often names of deities, of old pagan gods, have been twisted or changed, or even just transferred over from goddess to saint, or god to demon, and how quickly religious figures and people in power have changed a name, added on to a name. The Egyptians were constantly just adding things on to Ra, or the idea of Persephone, her being Korah first. Name changes are significant, and giving something a name is so powerful and very signifying. I don't know if you guys have heard of the old superstition as well that I always loved, which was, what is the meaning of the name you name any sort of child? Because that is what they will become. I think of Morticia from the Addams Family, naming Wednesday after her first favorite nursery rhyme, because the child of Wednesday is full of woe, and how she hoped her child would embody that. And in the melancholic gothic way, Wednesday kind of did. So for me, when I was thinking of like these demons, and the idea of a name being there, it being powerful, and also being a bit of a secret, and how important it was for my characters as they're bonding with these demons, and of course making deals, because where else would the story be if we weren't dealing with the demons that are popping around everywhere? How important it was in naming them. Sometimes I do have demons that are named something very mundane. There are demons named like Greg, because secrecy was most important, and it was the idea of someone blending in and also trying to humanize these demons. There are other times where a name is extremely important because of the meaning behind it. Are they someone that is associated with laziness or with any sort of other power or association with earth or elements, all of these things. And that was so significant for me because I think of the names of an entity, if you're calling them down and like that is your tie to this entire realm and world, there is so much more meaning and oomph behind the name. And also too, who is the person doing the naming, and does that meaning change to who is saying it and saying that name? I think so often how we forget, I think, we're like, oh yeah, of course, we all know Johns or Roberts, or, we go down the list of names and what are seen as normal names for right now in your current culture, because they have just become an everyday thing. You know a lot of these people, right? We all know so many J-name boys, and there are different types of associations and what that all contains within them. But we forget the different meanings behind stuff. A lot of times I like to look into, like currently for me, my name, Samantha Trena, means a lot of things, but also too, not even specifically Samantha, but Sam is very important to me, because like Samantha is a delineation of Samuel, and you go back, it's got Bible linkages, yada 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 yada, so many powerful meanings in there. And what does that embody? Do I embody that? Do I fight against it? Do I stand by that name and find power in it? Or do I switch up and do a change? I love the idea of identity, and when you're naming something, how it does kind of like set a precedent. It is the first introduction, but it also is it is the scaffolding of what you were trying to represent. I have several friends who are currently going through divorces, which ultimately I think will be much better off for them in the long run. But it's a new struggle, new identity, new separation of things. And it was funny listening to some of them talk about their names and knowing that like, oh yeah, I had like my married name was changed when we did get hitched, and now I'm going to change it, and I'm not even going back to my maiden name. I am instead going to make a whole new name for myself because that was so important. And where does that come from? And that was like, I was like, oh, that is such a cool idea. And also the idea that like many of us could just go and do that. We could go and say, no, I want to have my name changed, and you just provide all the documents, and it's like, sure, here you go, like you're now this. And how important in claiming that type of stuff is. Who we are and what we choose to go by, and the internal link with our identity, I think is extremely fascinating. I also like to play a lot with the idea of how these demons present, because for me, in my world of my book, the demons are these fluid entities. They are not solidly one gender. They are not solidly one human-like thing even. They can present themselves however they need to and or would like to. The struggle is just holding one form for very long while here without being named. The minute they are named, they can hold on to something. They can form something to their likeness. They can make themselves look like little to almost anything. And that was very powerful to me in the idea of like, okay, so here's this demon coming in, being named, making a contract, being a little sly, because of course they fucking are, being wily. And what would they choose to do? What would they choose to look like, knowing that they haven't chosen their name, that this name was given to them by someone, and the power that now holds over them, that name is the thing that creates that link. And how does that influence them, and how they move through our world as they adapt to it and learn what are the rules and regulations. How do you maneuver through this place? I think it's so interesting, and especially when I think of like witchcraft and spell work and the idea of names being, especially when given to gods or to other entities, naming spirits, and making sure that we don't lose what we can, and why it's so important to archive, I think, names and feel the full history of things overall, right? Because a game of telephone is so fast. Like, I like to think of like, what if it, like Persephone, what if she is so known by that name now, but what if her name had only ever been Cora, right? Like, what if we lost the Persephone side of her? What does that entirely changes her story, right? Like who she is and her mythos, and so much of who she is lost without Persephone. The evolution from Korra to Persephone is important. Same thing with all of the different machinations and versions of Amun Ra. Sobek had Ra, I think, had Ra added on. Sobek was added on to Ra at some point. The way we think of even the Roman gods being clear interpretations or carrying on of the Greek gods, just slightly renamed. What in the renaming did they gain? What in the renaming did they lose? When you change your name, and it's a breaking, it's an ending, it's a new chapter. And what does that look like? What does that end up empowering and containing, and making sure that we're speaking out to the gods and seeing them for all of their facets with the names, right? I don't know, names, and especially how they have changed throughout time, and their political and social and magical influence on and how that represents the cultures around them, I think is utterly fascinating, and something I love to deep dive even more, which is I think why they're such a integral part of my book and why I am fiddling with them constantly. Every time whenever it does release, which hopefully will be sometime next year. I'm hoping early next year is what we're going for, if I can get this other draft finally done of it and then get it off to an editor. But a little bit of a hint for all of you when you read it. Names are extremely significant. I picked names very strategically because it was a tell on a personality, and it was a tell on any time a name is changed for any given reason, that person and or entity evolves along with the name, and that is really important, and I love giving those little bits of hints here or there. So anyway, that's just kind of a little bit of my thought process in how I got started with the magic systems, I guess, in my book, and some of the rules and all that, and why names are so fascinating to me and how they have changed it all the culture. Is there any particular god, mythos, and or interesting name change that you think was very culture significant? Of course, comment that down below. And I will see you guys in the next video. All right? Bye-bye.